Good morning and welcome to another adventure of Library Adventures Live. Now, my name is Linda and I'm a librarian. Did you watch last week's session? I missed it. I was really cross because it was such a fantastic session. I'm going to read from my iPad what people said about it because I thought it was just good. He said, "This was a marvellously manic session from a brilliantly bonkers Jack, and I can't wait to read the sequel to his book. It was absolutely hilarious. Catch up if you can." So I read that this morning when I was looking for things that I was going to say to you. And I thought, well, I don't have time to watch it now, but I can't wait to watch it after the show. So it was about Ebenezer Tweezer, who's a 511-year-old who keeps a beast in his attic of his mansion. And he feeds this beast on all manner of things. And in return, it vomits presents for Ebenezer. But the beast grows even greedier and greedier, and it's bored with the diet of parrots and performing monkeys, so it looks for a different meal. Now, for goodness sake, who doesn't want to read that book and find out what's going on? And then at the end of the session, he set our challenge, and our challenge was, where do monsters like his come from? He told us that whether you're an author, a writer, a painter, or a poet, any child with a curious imagination can create a monster. So all you needed to do was get your pen, paper, bring your horrible imaginations, and all your happy memories as well. And then you could create your own monster. First of all, you had to go to your own happy place, and it could be anywhere. It could be in your bedroom, could be in your restaurant, could be at the beach, could be a computer game, could be anything. And then you had to write every detail down, describing it as clearly as you could, who was there, what they were wearing, what sounds you could hear, and what you could smell. What does your monster look like? What do they sound like? Perhaps you could even draw a picture. I mean, for goodness sake, what a challenge. So did you remember to send them in? If you didn't remember to send them in, you've still got time. Let's find the correct banners that we need. We've still got time to send them in. So get an adult and email them to us. And that's at lal@kirklees.gov.uk. And that's our email address. And then we'll be able to put them onto our website, which is there. And then you'll be able to look for them. So remember, if you haven't done your challenge from last week, that's where you need to be. Now, this week we've got Onjali Rauf with us. Now, Onjali is a children's author and a human rights activist. Her 2018 book, The Boy at the Back of the Class, won the 2019 Blue Peter Prize and also the Waterstone Children's Book Prize. Then she followed that up with another one called The Star Outside My Window and The Day We Met the Queen. But her latest book, The Night Bus Hero, which is all about humour and heart, is told from the perspective of a bully. I suppose we've always had bullies. We have bullies in school. We have bullies in life, really. Somebody always wants to get better of somebody. So we meet the bully, but then the book explores all these themes about homelessness and introduces us to homeless people. And then the bully finds out that everybody can change for the good. So it's about celebrating kindness and friendship, which I think is a pretty good thing to write a book about. Now, Onjali's beautiful storytelling perfectly highlights social issues in a way that fully engages with young readers. So she can tell stories about real world topics, but with an open heart and a sense of triumph, because she believes that big changes start with small people. Now, I think we've got Marsden Juniors with us today, Christchurch Woodhouse, Fieldhead, and I think Helm, C of the Academy are with us as well. So if you are there, can I ask you teachers, let me just put the right thing on here, that's it. Can I ask the teachers, please, if you're there, to let us know that you're listening, then we can give you a shout out and introduce you to Onjali. And if you have any questions, we're going to have a bit of a question and answer session like we usually do. So we'd be really pleased to have your questions for Onjali about her book. Now, I think I've done everything I'm supposed to do. So I'm going to very proudly welcome Onjali to Kirklees Libraries. Hi, Onjali.
Hello. Hi, Linda. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm so excited. All these things that you do, you have such an exciting life. How on earth do you find time to fit it all in?
I don't. That's why I'm late for everything, as my publishers and everyone else I know will tell you. But I have. It's a great honor to be able to do all the things I get to do, and I'm really excited to talk to you about some of them today.
So, I wondered. We haven't met before until this morning, but I've read lots of things about the work that you do with the books that you write. How would you describe Onjali Rauf to the children and the families who are watching today? How would you describe yourself?
Oh gosh, how would I describe myself? Always running late, always speaking very fast because I feel like I haven't got time to get all my thoughts out, and a great listener. I love listening to people, no matter their background, no matter their ages, and learning their stories. So yeah, I think those three things really.
Now we've already got some comments coming in. This is brilliant. We've got Miss Robinson, and Miss Robinson is year 6 from Cubit Town Junior School, and they're all here. So a big shout out to Miss Robinson and her class.
Yay! Hello.
And also a big shout out to YT. Oh, wait a minute. Can you see this? Let's just ask. What's that one, Jude? What's the last one on there?
Oh, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Jude.
I think I'm off mute now. Hi. It's YT Stealthy Snipes. Just says bro.
Just bro. I usually have a bigger screen. I can't see that small screen. Thank you, Jude, for that. Yeah, so we've got those two shout outs so far. I'll keep an eye on that so that we can watch so that we can invite people in, and hopefully we'll get some good questions from all these lovely people watching. Welcome to Library Adventures Live. Right then, Onjali, so would it be okay if we just hand over to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And Onjali is going to tell us a little bit about herself. She's going to tell us about the books, and then we'll have some questions afterwards, if that's okay. So over to you.
Thank you, Linda. Hello, everyone. Good morning. I hope you're well. I hope it's a little bit sunny where you are in London. Where I am right now, it's very grey and dull and kind of feels a little bit wintry, which is why I've got my jumper back on. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the Night Bus Hero and the boy at the back of the class and the Star Outside My Window a little bit as well. Because all my books really are centered on people that I've met in my world and people that I've come to know. Amazing, wonderful people whose stories deserve to be heard, and I get to put them in my books, which makes me really happy. Now I'm going to be sharing a screen with you because I think it'd be nice to see some pictures instead of just me waffling along. So let me just do that and hope it works. Bear with me 2 seconds. Right. Okay, so I am hoping that I am now sharing my screen. Is that all okay? I can't see anyone, but I'm hoping it is.
Yeah, we can see you. We can see we can see me. We can see you, and we can see your wonderful Night Bus Hero. That looks fantastic. Look at those. Look at those wonderful covers.
I know, I'm so lucky. Pippa Koenig, who's an amazing illustrator. So for any kids out there that love to draw, this may be something that you want to look into as a career going forward. Pippa Koenig is an amazing illustrator, and most of these covers have just been done in one go. Literally just tell her some of the story, parts of the story, and she goes and designs these amazing covers. And I'm completely in love with her and her work. She's just phenomenal. Now I'm going to start going I'm going to start telling you about the Night Bus Hero to begin with, because I think it's really the foundation of all the other stories in a weird way. So I'm going to be traveling back in time a little bit. I'm going to take you right back to when I was this age. This is me at the age of around 14, 15. I had massive fringe. I was really shy. I was very self-conscious with my glasses, and I would just kind of hide behind my fringe. I wasn't really shy around my friends or my teachers, but I was shy around strangers and people that I didn't know very well. But this is me at the age of 14, 15. And I actually, at this age, I didn't live too far from my school. My secondary school was literally a few minutes walk away. I just had to cross 2 roads and I'd be there. But what I would do is I would take the longest route round to my school as possible, pick up all my friends. It took me about 45 minutes extra. So I'd wake up early, go pick up all my friends and go to school that way. And on that route, I would pass my local police station. Now, this is East Ham Police Station. The building is still there, but it's no longer a police station. But when I was a kid, that police station was like a centre of my town. It was just a core of my town. And most of us would pass it on the way to the high street, or as I did, going to pick up my friends. Now, at the bottom of those steps that you see leading to the front doors, one day on my route to school, I noticed someone covered in blankets with a trolley parked by them that was sleeping at the bottom of the steps near one of the walls that you see there. And I was really shocked because even though I live in London and I've seen homeless people, of course I have, from a distance, I had never seen a homeless person that was quite old and someone who could have been old enough and seemed lovely enough to have been for example, my granddad's friend, you know. So I was really shocked. And I remember thinking, oh my God, there's an old man sleeping on the bottom of the police steps. Like, why is he there? And I would pass him by with my massive fringe, just staring at him. And I would do that for a couple of weeks. I think I just would walk on the way to school, see him there every morning. He was a new addition to my world, and I was curious about him, and I would just stare at him and walk past. And I think he began to notice, because after a while he began to wave at me. He must have found it very funny to have a kind of slightly curious, big fringed girl walking past him, staring at him every day. So he waved at me, and I thought, oh, he seems like a really lovely guy. Now, this isn't a picture of my old man that was at the bottom of those steps. This is a picture of Anthony Hopkins, who's a really famous actor, playing the role of a homeless King Lear. But I was really struck when I saw this picture in the papers because it reminded me of my old man at the bottom of those police station steps. He had the exact same kind of coat, very long, a bit dusty. He had that kind of trolley which was piled high with newspapers and plastic bags. He didn't have such a fancy hat. My old man had a woolly hat that he wore on his head, but this picture is almost the spitting image of the man that I saw lying at the bottom of those steps. Now, as I said, I was quite shy, and I didn't really have the courage to say or do anything. But after the old man started to wave at me, I started to try and think of ways to help him out without myself getting into trouble or or getting told off by anyone. So I decided to start saving things from my lunchbox and my friends' lunch boxes, or anything that my mum or dad would give me for tea, for example, and just hiding those away and running over to give him those things. On some really good weeks, I would save up my pocket money or any money that I had for example, birthday money or Eid money, save it up and go and buy him a hot drink or some fish and chips, just to keep him, you know, having a hot meal for that day. And that relationship really was a silent one, because even though I was giving him these things, I was too shy to speak to him. I'd run up to him, turn bright red under my glasses and under my fringe, give him those gifts. He would say thank you, and I would run away again. And even though he probably wanted to say more, I just didn't give him the chance to. I would just run away because I was too shy. I was too lost for words, really, to say anything to him. And this went on for a good number of years. It went on right until I started my first year at college. So 2-3 years have gone by. By this time, my parents know about him and they were giving me money to give to him. And on my way to college, I was very lucky. My bus stop was right outside that police station. So I saw him every day, and not just every morning, but every night as well when I got home. And I'd always give him things. But one day he wasn't there. His trolley was gone. The cardboard boxes that he slept in and had packed away so neatly around the corner of that police station every day was gone. And for 2 or 3 days, I missed him. I just couldn't understand where he was, because he had a pattern. And during that time, it was springtime, he was always there every morning. So this went on for a few days, and I really began to worry about him. So I mustered up the courage to go up the steps of the police station and ask, has anyone seen the old man who sleeps by the steps here? And the answer I got was really devastating. It really shook me, and I think it led me on the course that I'm on right now. The answer that I got from the police officer was, we're really sorry, but he actually died a few nights ago. And that answer, as if that wasn't enough to shake me, led me to ask, well, did you know his name? What was his name? Because I really wanted to know his name. I hadn't even had the courage to know his name. And the answer I got to that question was, we think his name was Thomas. Everyone called him Thomas. So nobody even really knew what this old man, this wonderful, kind old man's name had been. And he had died on the streets right there in my town. Now, this moment in my life was really the pivoting moment. It changed everything. It changed my outlook. It also made me really angry at myself because I wished that I had had the courage to speak to him a little bit more, to find out what his name was, even his real name, and find out a little bit more about his story. So I began to start working on a number of things in my life, and it really started from that point. So literally a few weeks after this happened, I began to volunteer at my mum's homeless charity. She worked at a homeless shelter at that time, and I began on my journey really to all the other things that I've done. So The Boy at the Back of the Class is about a refugee boy who walks into a classroom. And for those of you who've read it will know that the narrator is desperate to be their friend. That book would never have been written if it wasn't for Thomas. It was because of Thomas I began to go and explore and work with homeless shelters and any space that started to take in and try and help people who are homeless. And being a refugee is the worst, most devastating. I mean, all forms of homelessness is devastating, but to not even have a country to be able to call your own anymore is really the most extreme form of homelessness anyone can undergo. And it was because of my work to the homeless shelters that I began to start working with refugee charities and began to study about women refugees in particular. And it was that journey that really started to make me wonder about what it meant to be a refugee and what that word in relation to homelessness meant. And why it was that this word even existed. So I've gone from Thomas to exploring the word refugee. And of course, for those of you who have read the book and are studying, for example, any special subjects around the matter, you'll know that a refugee is someone who's been forced to leave their home, leave their town, leave even their country in order to save their own lives. And there is nothing illegal about being a refugee, but the way they're being treated is really horrendous. And it's because of Thomas that I began to understand that word more deeply, explore stories about refugee children, refugee women who had been killed in the process of trying to get to safety, and travel out to the camps, which I still try and do. Haven't been able to do it this past year because of this pandemic, but my teams are out there and this is what they're dealing with. And this is a form of homelessness that we don't see very much on the news. And I think it's really important you know what refugees are having to put up with and what refugees are having to live with. So The Boy at the Back of the Class, if I hadn't done all those things, if Thomas's life and his part in my life hadn't led me to start asking questions and be angry at myself and go and try and explore what's going on in the world, I would never have seen these scenes. I would never have been honoured enough to meet the people who are in this situation and trying to get help. And it's because of that kind of journey that I met women and children who inspired The Boy at the Back of the Class, in particular this little baby called Rayhan, who the book is dedicated to. I would never have met him if it wasn't for Thomas. So Thomas is kind of my link to everything, and his story, or the lack of it, led me to go and explore other people's stories and led me to write for the very first book, The Boy at the Back of the Class. So I'm really, really proud that I get to know and work with and understand on a really deep level what different forms of homelessness means. And before even The Boy at the Back of the Class was written, another form of homelessness that I was working with and that I work with are, of course, women and children who are having to leave their homes in order to try and stay safe because of someone that's dangerous at home. So working within women's rights and women's shelters and women's refuges and meeting amazing, just so courageous. These people are so courageous to leave everything behind and try and find safety again. That also is another form of homelessness. So again, that's all linked to Thomas and his story, me wanting to know more about why it is that people end up on the streets, end up in shelters, end up being a refugee. So for those of you who might not know about The Star Outside My Window, Star Outside My Window is about a little girl called Anaya and her brother called Noah. The book opens with them going into a foster home, and a foster home is almost like a refugee shelter. They're taking in children who have been through really horrible situations, and they're trying to give them a safe space to recover and try and move on with their lives. And I have to say, this is one of the most difficult books, and it's one of the most difficult forms of homelessness to talk about, because it's so tragic that children are having to go through this every week. But Anaya has something very special about her. She's a star hunter. She's a stargazer. Now, I am a huge lover of astronomy. I spent most of my childhood, and it's probably why I have to wear these glasses, staring up at the sky, wishing that I could be an astronomer and wishing that I could, map the stars and get to know all about them and even travel up to touch one. That was always my dream as a kid. So the fact that Anaya is a stargazer links her story to The Lion King, which is why I have Simba here. And really, this was my brother brother's idea. I was really struggling to write this book. My brother asked me, what's going on? Why are you struggling so much? What is it about? And I said, it's about a little girl who goes into a foster home. She is really, really scared and she's trying to find her mum, but she believes her mum is a star. And my brother then said, oh, you like that scene in The Lion King? And that was the click that made me write this story and link it to the stars as I have done. So if you're really passionate about the stars, if you're really a cyclist as well, because Anaya is a massive cyclist, the kids going on a massive adventure to try and help this star who they believe is Anaya's mum. So that's what The Star Outside My Window is about, and it deals with another form of homelessness in a way, and trying to find answers to questions. Now, going back to The Night Bus Hero, The Night Bus Hero was written in March last year. So around about this time, I started writing it. I was having quite a hard time because I'm not a writer who likes to stay at home. I like to be out and about. I like to go out and listen to people's stories and kind of forge ideas that way. But I did know that when I started The Night Bus Hero, I wanted 4 to 5 main things in the story, and that's where I had my baseline. I'm not a huge planner, but I do know roughly what I want to write about. I knew that I wanted the night bus to be in it. Now, being a person who's lived in London most of her life, whenever I've worked really late, for example, in my office jobs and traveled home on the night bus myself, I've seen people sleeping on buses. Most of them are homeless. They're trying to find somewhere safe and warm to stay. And they will jump buses all night long just to get half an hour's sleep somewhere safe, where the ground isn't wet and soggy, or where there's not rain falling on you, or where the temperatures aren't sub-zero. And a lot of bus drivers are really lovely. They let these wonderful human beings sleep on their buses and will often wake them up and get them onto the next bus that they can travel on somewhere else and stay warm. So I knew I wanted the night bus on there in the book, and that the book would be centered around this wonderful kind of magical transportation system that homeless people have to use to try and stay warm, because we don't have enough shelters, unfortunately, and very sadly. I knew that I wanted Thomas in there. Now, I did have this question as to whether or not I was going to keep my Thomas in, as in keep the name. But I decided it had to be him. And the book is the story is almost like an adventure that I would love to have gone on with Thomas to try and help other homeless people. So I decided to keep him in and to keep his name in. So there would be a homeless man at the core of this story, and his name is, of course, Thomas. I also knew that there was going to be some robberies happening. I wanted there to be a gang who commit a series of robberies for which homeless communities are being blamed for. Now, you'll almost always find that in the world, when something goes wrong with anything, with the economy, with something political, with something, just something even small within a village, there's always an inclination to blame the most vulnerable groups of people. And in this case, this gang are purposefully pointing the finger at homeless communities, trying to make it out as if they're doing it. But are they doing it? Is it really them? That's something that the story centers around. And I knew that there would be really outlandish, outrageous robberies that no one can really understand. So that had to be in it. I knew that I had to have a character who was kind of a little bit superheroic and had a feeling for animals and a way of interacting with animals. And I'm going to go into why that is a little bit in a few minutes, in a little bit. And I knew at the core of the story would be a bully. Now, it's not normal to write a heroic story about a bully and to question whether or not he can be heroic. But I knew that I wanted that main narrator to be the bully, because no matter who I've worked with, whether it's homeless people, whether it's refugees, whether it's women and children running away from home trying to find safety, all of those forms of homelessness, all of those people at some point or another have been bullied, whether it's by people, whether it's by communities, whether it's by agencies and the government. They will have been bullied, and they know what it's like to be attacked and targeted and made out to feel as if something is your fault, as if it's your fault you're in the situation that you're in. So and also with Thomas, I wasn't the only one who saw him every day on my way to school. There were other kids from my school who saw him as well, but they weren't so nice. They would call him names and make fun of him as they walked past, and it always made me wonder, why does any bully feel that they can do that to someone? Why does anyone want to pick on someone who's more vulnerable and who is in clearly a greater state of need? What makes someone feel that they can do that? What's going on with them? And I think Hector, for me, is a kind of answer to that question. And also the name Hector, I knew right away what the character's name was going to be, which is often quite difficult for me, but I knew it would be Hector. Now, for those of you who are into Roman or Greek mythology, you will know that Hector is a Trojan prince, and he's not an ordinary Trojan prince. He's actually one of the most peaceful Trojan princes. He doesn't like war, but he will, go to the death for his community to save his people. And he's a huge family man. He loves his family. He loves his community, which is completely the opposite to everything that Hector in the book is. So I wanted to have a character whose very name suggested he could be a hero, but his character suggests that he's anything but. So that's all the kind of ingredients that I wanted to put into the book. And I'm going to stop here for a few seconds, and I'm going to read you a little bit from the book. For those of you who have read it or might have it with you, it's on page 20, and it's just at this moment when Hector, the bully, has had a bit of an embarrassing day at school. His two best friends are making fun of him, and he is deciding to try and do something to big himself up again. And this is when he notices the Thomas in the book, the homeless man in the book, sitting on a bench, and decides to do something quite nasty. So we reached the top of the hill where an old bench stood beneath the oak trees, and that's when I spotted him, the old man. I'd seen him there before, lots of times, sitting on the bench next to a trolley piled high with rubbish. He was in his usual long, old, crumply black coat that looked as if it had been pulled out from a bin, and was wearing the bright yellow woolly hat he always had on his head, even in summer. And without even trying, I had the most genius idea that had ever been born. In fact, it was so genius and so out of the box and so unexpected that I knew it'd be enough to make Will and Katie, my two best friends, shut up once and for all. I stopped walking, which made Will and Katie automatically stop too. "Want to have some fun?" I asked. Will nodded, a smile breaking out across his face. "See the old man there?" I asked, pointing towards the bench. "You mean the old trolley man?" asked Katie. "We're going to let him know he's not allowed here anymore." "How?" whispered Katie, leaning in towards me. I waited for a few seconds to keep them guessing, and then whispered back, "I'm going to take his hat." "His hat?" asked Will. "Yep, he's always wearing that gross, stinky hat." Katie finally smiled, which meant she thought my idea was cool. "Come on," I said, "let's go." So that just gives you an inkling of the kind of character Hector is. He's willing to pick on this man who hasn't done anything to him ever to try and big himself up. Now, as with all my books, proceeds of the royalties go towards certain charities that I support and work with. And also some of the characters in the book are based on some of the absolute heroes and sheroes that I get to meet every single day of my life, which keeps me going on with doing what I do. And one of them, two of them I have to talk to you about. And one of them is Lola. Lola's homeless. This is Lorraine to Bone. So Lorraine set up Lola's homeless just 5 years ago. She was going home from work one evening, very tired, very exhausted. She was walking through a shopping centre, and she suddenly saw a pile of blankets in a shop doorway, a closed shop. It was derelict, and the blanket was moving. So she was a little bit shocked, and she waited to see what was underneath this blanket. And it turned out to be a young woman who was homeless and in need of just a lot of care. And she was also very, very thin, which meant she probably hadn't eaten for a few days. So Lorraine went over to her, and she bought her a hot meal, some gloves and socks to try and stay warm and dry. And Lorraine promised this woman that I'm going to come back this weekend, try and be here in the same spot. I'll come and find you, and I'll try and bring as much as I can to help you out. To a rucksack for things, some food, some vouchers to go and buy yourself some hot food. So all of these things. But Lorraine didn't just do that. Within a space of a week, she had mobilized over 40 people in her neighborhood. They went back to that same shopping center with, I think it was 14 cars loaded with all sorts of wonderful things for homeless people. And they ended up helping every single homeless person in that whole neighborhood. They spent the whole night doing it. And from that moment, she set up Lola's Homeless. And for 5 whole years, she's been working out of her tiny garage, which is literally 10 minutes down the road from me, mobilizing hundreds of people every single week. And she knows every single homeless person, not just in our borough, but also beyond. And she tries and help. She tries to help every single one of them. She's an absolute hero, and it's people like that I want us to hear about and celebrate, because we often don't hear about them, and I think that's a travesty. The other person I want to talk to you about and who inspired a part of this story is Dan Atkins. Now, Dan is quite an amazing man. He's one of the most generous, open-hearted people you'll ever meet. Dan is an engineer. He fixes buses and coaches, the engines of buses and coaches when they break down, and just keeps them going. And one day after work, he was grabbing his bags and he noticed one of his colleagues kind of hiding away in the corner of the garage that they were working in. And Dan went up to him and said, look, what's going on? Why are you hiding here? Why have you got a massive bag with you? And the man said, my wages aren't enough. I've been kicked out of my flat because I can't afford the rent. So I've actually been hiding here for a couple of weeks. I don't have anywhere to go. And all the homeless shelters are full. So I just thought it'd be safer to stay here in the garage every night. So Dan did something quite amazing. He didn't just give his friend a few pounds to go and stay in a hostel or get a hot meal. He went out, he took out his life savings, went and bought a derelict bus, a bus that no one was ever going to use, it just waiting to get kind of smashed and taken to a recycling centre. He bought that bus, drove it back, fixed it up, drove it back to his friends, the road outside the garage that they were in, and said, look, use this bus as an address. We're going to tell the local postman that this is an address now. You can deliver letters to, you can start applying for a space that you can afford. You can start applying for a better job. I'll give you a laptop. And since then, Buses for Homeless has begun to renovate old buses, make sure that they're not just places that homeless people sleep, but also they get trained in, that they get, therapy in, that they get counselling in, and that they use as a stop before they can move into somewhere that's safe for them. And he is absolutely staggering, and he's working in London. He's trying to make this go national. So if you ever want to learn about him, just hit the internet and find out all about him and his amazing works. He's just phenomenal. So these amazing heroes and sheroes are out there everywhere around us, and wherever you are, wherever your friends and family are, I can guarantee you there are amazing people just like them who are doing amazing things to help our homeless communities, no matter what form of homelessness that might take. It might be people sleeping on the streets, it might be people who are refugees, might be local women's refuges, but they're out there, and it's really, really amazing when you come to learn of them. So, I'm going to set you my challenge now. So my challenge to all of you is to create a character based on someone who you think is a bit of a hero, a bit of a shero. What are they doing in the world that makes you think of them as someone who's really, really wonderful? It could be a teacher, it could be someone in your family, it could be someone you've heard about on the news, it could be someone that you have discovered in a book yourself. Like, what is it about that character that makes them a hero, shero to you? And I want you to create a story about them based on the one thing in the world that you would like to change. So this character is going to be mobilized by you to change something that you're passionate about. So I'm hoping that challenge is something that you really enjoy doing, and that you enjoy, that you enjoy discovering as well. So going out there and learning about heroes and sheroes who are doing pretty amazing things, but might not make it on the news, might not be in history books or our books, but who you want to champion as a hero or shero, and what they would do if they could to help you in your mission to change something in the world. So that's my challenge to you, and I'm going to stop sharing now and go back and hopefully meet up with Linda to hear some of your questions, and I hope I'm left you enough time to do that. Right. Is that okay? Oh,
now then, we're back.
Yes. Can you see?
We're all back. Yes, we're all back. Right. I should be looking this way because this is where my little screen is. But my screen is so small that I can't see the big questions. And we've had some lovely questions coming in from Miss Robinson's class, which I want to start with. So even though I'm not looking at that screen, I'm looking at this one. Is that okay? I haven't gone crazy. I've just got two screens to look at. So, yes, when I said, can you just introduce us in 3 words? And you said about how fast you go. You remind me of one of the girls that I work with, who's one of our development librarians, and she's a fantastic lady. And she's the lady responsible for starting this whole LAL thing. She's got a team. She's got a lovely team around her now. And she's called Kirsty. So a big shout out for Kirsty, because Kirsty talks as fast as you do. Kirsty talks as fast as you do. Right. So the first question came from Miss Robinson's class from Nabila. And when you were talking about Thomas, who had unfortunately died, I think Nabila felt a little bit like I did, because it kind of gets you here. These people, we don't even know their real names. And yet we're all people, we're all human beings, we're all somebody's children, we're all somebody's mums, somebody's dads. So Nabila asked, after Thomas unfortunately died, did you feel inspired to raise awareness for homeless people and those sleeping rough? Now, I think you've probably answered the question, but because Nabila had sent it in, I wanted to ask it again.
Oh, thank you so much, darling Nabila. Yes, absolutely. So it really, like, it still shakes me to my core that happened. It still shakes me to my core that I didn't do enough for Thomas. I could have done so much more, especially as my parents knew about him in the last couple of years. So I began immediately to work for my mum's homeless shelter. So every summer, a holiday, I would go and work with homeless families, and I would do all kinds of wonderful things. I'd hear about their stories. And at school, what I started to do was, all kinds of things. I would start to campaign with my friends to start petitions up for the local government to help out more, to try and get friends donating to the local soup kitchens and stuff like that. So I did whatever I could really in my time, and I think I still am. So yeah, absolutely. It was one of the biggest things to raise awareness, and get other people mobilized and get other people knowing, because a lot of people don't know about it, or they're a bit scared to find out about it. Yeah.
I think it's something that goes on in the background. And I think it's something that we all need to talk about a lot more. We could all do something,
absolutely,
can't we?
Absolutely.
Now, the next question came from Rehath, and Rehath asks, what inspired you to be an author? This is always a good question. What inspired you to be an author?
It's a really simple answer to that question. It's really all the other authors that I grew up with. So I was a huge fan of the famous five. I was desperate to be George. I remember having a massive argument with my mum and dad about how come I don't have a private island why can't you give me an island that I can go and have adventures in with my friends? I wanted to be any character from Roald Dahl's books. I thought Roald Dahl was such an amazing, and just all these amazing authors that inspired me. The Hobbit, J.R. Tolkien, all these amazing authors made me want to write stories like them. And of course, Tintin. So I've got Snowy up here. Tintin's Adventures, it was one of the first books that I saw a character going off around the world, and I saw characters in those books that looked kind of like my Uncle Jamil and stuff. So I thought this would be so cool to be able to create adventures, and I want to be able to do that. So I began writing from a really young age, from around about 7, inspired by Tintin, really. So yeah, I just want to write like them and get to share stories like they did. So really the authors of my world. And that just goes with the people that I meet. All the people I meet have fantastic, amazing stories. Nobody is the same. Even if you're a twin, you are just, you have your own version of the world. You have your own adventures. And I just, they make me want to write stories as well. So both of those things, really. Fantastic question.
And we have to talk about libraries, of course. So one of my questions would be, did you use libraries as a child? Were libraries an inspiration to you as a child? Where did you get all this wonderful knowledge of reading books from?
Definitely the library. So when I was a kid, we couldn't afford to buy books. Books were something that we got as presents for Eid or birthdays, but we couldn't afford to just go and buy any books we wanted. So every single Friday, my mum would pick me and my brother up from school, and we'd just leg it to the local library before it finished at 5 o'clock, before it closed its doors, and we would just max out our library cards, and those books would keep us going for the whole week. So the library was the center of my world, both in town and my school. And my rucksack, my friends would joke it was one of the heaviest, because I would just lug all the books around every single day in case I wanted to read them at break time and things. So the library was my center, and I would not be here if it wasn't for my librarians and my library. My mum taking me and my brother out to the library every single week for years. I think one of my first memories of book reading is sitting in a corner of a library. So yeah, because we didn't have money for books at home.
That's what we like to hear. That's what we like to hear. This is the one that's been making my rucksack heavy this week. this is the one that I've been carrying around.
You're carrying the whole bus around, Linda. That's
carrying the whole bus around. Yes, it's just such a fantastic book. So we'll go back to Miss Robinson's class, because I want to give a shout out to all these wonderful children that have sent in these questions for us. So we've got Ryan, who says, do you write all your books from personal experience?
Oh, that's a really good one.
We've got some fantastic questions coming from Miss Robinson's class.
I love it.
Miss Robinson's class has got some really clever children.
Yes, we do. So it's a mixture. So I do have moments in the books where they are based on my personal experience. So for example, in The Night Bus Hero, when Mei Lee, who's an amazing character, goes, takes Hector to the soup kitchen, all of that atmosphere, all of that buzz, all of that kind of singing and dancing and making food until your arms ache, all of that's based on experience, because I love those kind of days in my life where I get to do all of that. But of course, I've not been Hector, I've not been the narrator in the Back class or Anaya, but they're based on true stories. The experiences are based on other people's stories, and I've just made it into a story with moments of my own. But I've not been on those journeys, so there's it's not all me. It's definitely not all me, but it's definitely based on people that I've met. So I hope that makes sense. Yeah.
Yes, it does make sense. I think every author that we've talked to have said the same thing. It's about experience. I read somewhere that you wanted to write books about chocolate originally.
Yes. So the way I got my agent, I mean, chocolate is the most important thing in the world. Come on, aside from books. So before I got my agent, before I wrote The Boy at the Back of the Class, I'd actually secured my agent through a trilogy around chocolate for middle grade as well, and just this massive adventure that takes place around chocolate and the whole industry. But that hasn't seen the light of day yet, and that was 9 years of research, i.e. eating chocolate and going to chocolate factories and writing to people who own chocolate factories to say, can I please come on researching this book? And can you also send me free samples of your chocolate? So that was fun, and I'm hoping that I still get to go back and work on that one day. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. You've done your research, Linda. I like it. I need to send you some chocolate now.
Now you see, I break the mold, no pun intended, because I'm not a massive chocolate fan. I let all females down. I'm not a massive chocolate fan, unfortunately.
Oh, not just females, all humankind.
I know.
Oh no! Oh, we'll have to find
right.
Make sure you
there's just one, but I won't mention it. Other chocolates are available. Now then, can you see these? Can you see the chat?
No, I can't, because I sent a hello everyone, and then there's nothing there. So I don't know.
That's fine. Right. So the next question is it's the names that I'm struggling to pronounce. It's UMAYIAH.
Yumiya?
Maybe? Yumiya.
Sorry, darling, if I got that wrong.
Sorry, darling, if we get your names wrong. So the next question is and she says, which is your favourite character out of all the characters that you've created?
That's a cruel question. I love them all. They're like my fingers are attached to me, and they're all very different. Yeah, I can't answer that question. I love them all. It's like asking which kid is your favorite kid. And it is.
It's difficult, isn't it?
It's a trap. I love them all. That's a good answer. It is a good answer, is that one? Yumina, I hope that's okay with you. Okay.
Yumina is also in Miss Robinson's class, and she asks, she asks, who is your favourite author? So that's another one. Do you have a favourite author?
So cruel. Okay, so that's like asking me which star in the sky is the brightest. There is no answer. I have about 50,000 authors that I have loved and continue to love. So I suppose when I was at school, it was definitely, the author of the Tintin books, Hergé. It was Enid Blyton. It was Roald Dahl. I was a huge fan of the Nancy Drew books. J.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. All of those books were so massive to me. Secret Garden, Railway Children. And my mum was also a huge Agatha Christie reader. So I would steal her Agatha Christie books when I was in primary school and read Poirot and Miss Marple. And I still love Agatha Christie and Sherlock Holmes. So, just too many. There's no way I can answer that question. And I challenge anyone to give one answer to that question.
I think it's difficult, but it does get a shout out for all those really good authors. If we get that sort of question, and I love the way the books are told from a narrator's point of view. I think that's a lovely way of getting the reader to your books. Sorry, the Night Bus and the Boy at the Back of the Class are both told from the narrator's point of view, from the narrator's voice, sorry. And I think that is a lovely way of getting the reader to empathise with the characters and feel how they're feeling and how they change through your books. But I noticed when you wrote the Boy at the Back of the Class, you purposefully held back the name and the gender of the narrator until the end of it. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Absolutely. So with The Boy at the Back of the Class, I didn't want it to matter who the narrator actually was. I wanted anyone reading it to feel as if this could be them, or it could be someone they know. And I didn't want it to matter, what their sex or gender was. I didn't want it to matter what their name was. I didn't want it to matter where they came from, what their own story was. So you see snippets of it. You see snippets of what the narrator's actually gone through themselves. But I didn't want it to matter until the end. There are a few slip-ups. We had a few slip-ups that made it into the manuscript, and some kids notice it, some don't. But it's always intended to hide it as best as we could until the very end. And that's just literally, I wanted everyone to feel like they could be this person, and all that mattered was the immense magnitude of their heart, and the fact that they would basically go to any lengths to help this boy out, and try and be his friend. So yeah, that's the main thing. And also, growing up as a girl, most of the heroes and sheroes that I looked up to were tomboys, or were girls that wanted to be kind of like boys. And there was always a big thing in my head of why does it can't you just be anyone you want to be and not have to have these labels? So it was kind of my breakout from that as well, just to say, look, it really doesn't matter, it's just this person who matters.
And I think if it also means that it can come from, it's a universal feeling. It's a universal feeling that one of the other questions. Let me see this. Find the other question. What is your favourite way of being kind?
Oh my God, that's such a lovely question. I've never been asked that before.
Yes.
Wow, what staggering question.
Well, your books are all about hope and friendship and key messages from the people that's telling the story.
Yeah.
I love the way you're raising awareness, and I love the way you're raising awareness of such massive questions, such massive situations by mobilising, small people of today, which I think is a wonderful thing to do, because they're children are the future.
They're our biggest hope. You're all our biggest hope. You have so much to offer the world.
Not to sing at you.
But the answer to that it would be friendship. I think the longest way of being kind to someone is to be their friend, especially if they're the one that gets picked on, especially if they're the one that's being bullied, especially if they're the one that's a little bit different and come from a different background and is struggling. To be someone's friend is the longest form of being kind, and it isn't just a kindness to them, it's a kindness to yourself, because you grow and you learn and you get so much from that friendship. It's just never ending. So that's my favorite way of being kind. It's lovely to give stuff as well, of course, but to be a friend, to be a true friend is pretty awesome.
That's a really good answer. I like that one. Do you believe that books then have the power to challenge and change prejudice and people's prejudice?
Absolutely. And I think children's books are really underestimated. They've been doing that since time began. So whether it's any of the books that we're reading, the kind of the negative characters are always people that want to dictate how the world should be, or want to have some kind of power that shouldn't be theirs. It's always about fighting the negatives of the world. So whether it's The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, or whether it's Harry Potter, or whether it's any book that is taking an issue of fighting great evils in any form, it's always been there. Books have the capacity to open our eyes and live other stories that we would never ever get to interact with, to live, and even if they're in a fantastical form, it just shows you what it means to be a good person in the world. And I don't think there's any book that doesn't do that, really.
That sounds pretty good. The last question that I've got for you is that the books are aimed at middle grade children, kind of 8, 9, 10 middle grade children. The boy in the back of the class is it's around 9-year-olds. How hard was it to keep the books suitable for younger readers, considering the subject matter?
Do you know what, Linda? It wasn't actually that hard, because I'm really lucky. I'm surrounded by kids in my world. So I'm a godmother. I have nephews and nieces who are of all ages running around creating a mock, and listening to them and listening to the questions that they throw at me when I come back from refugee camps, when I've come back from a women's shelter, when I've come back doing whatever I'm doing. Those questions forged the basis of most of my books, because it made me realize that actually a lot of kids have so many. I mean, it's the same when I was a kid. I had so many questions and I didn't know where to go with them. And when I hear them talk and try and reason out what's going on in the world, because you know, everyone's very aware of what's going on. You know, all you kids are so super hyper aware of what's going on in the world, and we weren't like that when I was your age, luckily, I think. But hearing them and listening to them makes the voice that comes out for the book quite easy, because I'm literally taking verbatim sometimes what my nephew might have asked me, or what my niece might have said, or what my godchild might have said, or what I've heard in schools when I go to visit. So it's not that hard, and I really enjoy it because it takes me back to, you know, those days of being in school, those days of being a kid. Yeah, it's not as hard as I think some people might think it is. It's just listening.
I think that's a skill that we've all got to practice, just listening.
Yeah. And, you know, our kids are so full of wisdom. You know, you get those questions sometimes, even from a 4-year-old, you get a question that is so simple and so staggering. There's no way to answer it. You need a whole book to answer it. So I suppose my books are really just attempted answers at questions that have been thrown at by kids in my world.
Well, I think we're just about coming to the end of the question and answers. I must say, apart from your wonderful backdrop, I do love your earrings.
Oh, thank you so much. I spend most of my time on Etsy looking for cool things, so this is from Etsy. But yeah, no, thank you so much. The Snipe Bus Hero theme. Yeah.
So what we do next, the bit that we do next is we just say all the thank yous, but I would like to go over your challenge again. Could you just reiterate the challenge, and then that'll be fresh in people's minds for what they're going to do after they've watched the show?
Okay, so my challenge to you is to pick a character from your real world, so who you regard as a hero or shero, someone doing really wonderful things that maybe not everyone knows about. It could be a teacher, it could be a parent, it could be someone in your family, it could be someone you've read about, and make that character, put that character into a story where they do something to help you change the world, do one thing to change the world in the way that you would want it to be changed. So it could be this character is used because you want to do something to help homeless people. It might be something to do with the environment. It might be do something with, you know, I don't know, helping animals. It could be anything, but using a character from the real world and making them part of your story and giving them a mission to do something to change the world in a way that you would want them to. It's a little bit long-winded, but I hope it makes sense. So it's just basically using a character from the real world to create one change in the world and making a story around that.
That would be a fantastic thing. And if you could send those, get a grown-up to send those, I'll come back to this screen now, get a grown-up to send those into our email address, which is LAL, that's Libraries Adventures Live, LAL, at kirklees.gov.uk. So if you send those in, that's our email address, and then we'll have a look at those and we will be able to put them onto our website, which is kirkleeslibraries.co.uk/LAL. Yeah, Paddington. We're going to have to talk about Paddington before we go. We haven't spoken to Paddington. We've been here all this time. Tell us why Paddington is sharing the screen today.
Right, Paddington is sharing the screen today because in the Night Bus Hero, one of the first things that the thieves steal is a statue of Paddington from Paddington Station, which is a real life statue that's in that station, and it goes missing. It's just gone. And I thought, wouldn't it be hilarious if something so crazy as a statue of Paddington Bear, who kind of, you know, is a kind of icon of homelessness and friendliness and giving something who doesn't have a home, you know, if that goes missing. So that's why Paddington Bear is here.
Thank you for that. Right, okay. A massive thank you, Onjali. It's been amazing. It's been absolutely fantastic. How you find time to fit all this into your life, I do not know. It's been so lovely to meet you. Are you happy to stay with us for a little while I just finish off this?
Absolutely.
Yeah? Okay. So then we go back to what's going to happen next. Now, we've got Library Adventures Live, which is every Tuesday at 11 o'clock. But we also have things called Library Adventures Live Plus. We've got 1 or 2 LAL Pluses coming up as well. So we're going to be celebrating World Book Day with local performance poet, rap artist and author Rapperman. And that's Rapperman is Donovan Christopher. Rapperman, he will be performing and having fun with poetry and showing us how easy it is to write your own rhyme. We'll also be having a sneak preview of some poems from his soon-to-be-published new book. So grab a pen and pencil and start creating raps. Now that's going to be on Thursday. That's this Thursday. So we are Tuesday the 2nd today. Thursday the 4th, to celebrate World Book Day, we are going to have a special LAL Plus, which is going to be 2 o'clock. It won't be 11 o'clock. It will be 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's to write your own poetry and start creating your own raps. Next Tuesday, we are back at the regular time of 11 o'clock. And that's for the regular slot. And it's all about laughter and well-being with Simon James Green and Helen Rutter. So I'm going to tune in for that one. It's going to be a fun and happy session, I'm told. So I'll be tuning in for that one. But don't forget to look for last week's as well, because last week's was absolutely amazing. And you can get all the past LALs on kirkleeslibraries.co.uk/LAL. We're just coming up now to our last couple of minutes. So again, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Don't forget to join in next time. Bye-bye, Snowy. Bye-bye, Paddington.
Bye.
And see you next week on Library Adventures Live. Thank you.